My name is Vinance Roche, and with me is Ayush Yoda Banker. This is Men Talk Mental Health, and today we panic.
So picture this. You're about to go to work. Everything is normal like you do every single day of your life. It's just a regular Monday. You get into work, sit at the desk that you've always sat on, and everything seems like it's just going to be completely normal and everything's going to just be another day. But before you know it, you log into your computer and the same setup you've used for the last year feels weird. It feels like it's not your setup. There's a strange pain in my right arm, which eventually starts to go numb. My right arm, not left. And I start to lose focus on what I'm looking at on the screen. Before I realize it, I'm kind of feeling like everything is surreal. I go to the bathroom, wash my face, go to the break room, grab a donut, figure some sugar might help, come back in, and before I know it, no different. Happens again. I already know at the start of this workday something's not right. I realize immediately that what I need to do is get out of there, go see a doctor. Something's very wrong. Before I'm able to really understand what's going on with me, I tell my boss I'm making a move, I'm leaving. I get into my car, and I start by first parking in the closest parking lot because I don't feel confident to drive. I kind of close my eyes, I meditate, I try to center myself because I have a 30-mile, 40-minute drive back to the doctor that I want to go to. And I get on the freeway. I am driving around 65, 70 miles an hour, and boom, it hits me. My horizon starts to tilt. I don't understand what's going on. The world starts spinning. It's like there's an earthquake, but it's only affecting me. I'm driving at high speeds, and I start to fear for my life. I have no idea what's going to happen, and I feel like I might crash at any moment. I feel like I'm going to lose control of the vehicle completely. And before I know it, my life is flashing before my eyes. I'm not even joking. I'm thinking about what's going to happen to my 1.5-year-old daughter if she doesn't have me, especially because I'm all she has at this time. I think about what's going to happen to my parents who are being supported by me. I think about what's going to happen to all these different people who I am the glue for that's holding their lives together. And I say, okay, you know what? I'm going to focus. I'm going to rally. I'm going to find my center. I'm going to keep going. I need to get to this doctor. So I continue driving, and this focus, as I focus harder on the car in front of me, it's almost like I'm on a roller coaster, pulling too many G's, and it's like I'm going to start to black out. My vision starts to pinhole, and I'm not sure what's going on. So I slow down, open the window, turn the music down, and some fresh air hits me, and I feel like, okay, maybe I'm feeling better. I slow down, pull into the right lane. I don't stop because I know I need to get to a doctor. Like, nothing's going to stop that. I need to get to a doctor. So I slow down, pull into the right lane, and I'm coasting. But as I coast, or rather, the more I coast, the more the vertigo hits me, the more my ears are pounding, the more pressure I feel in my eardrums. And it just, I can't do it. So I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's speed up. Let's get some adrenaline pumping. And I do that. I overtake a car ahead of me. And that doesn't help either, because now I'm going back to feeling like I'm on a roller coaster pulling too many G's. It's nerve-wracking. Takes me 40 minutes, 45 actually. And I eventually get to the doctor.
Wow. That sounds extremely dangerous and pretty terrifying, actually. Especially that piece when you start overtaking the other car. In my head, I was like, I don't think you should be doing that. But I think at that particular point of time, you were just trying your best to find some sense of balance and feel centered, and you were trying everything, right, from music to rolling down the window, and you just wanted to get to the doctor. I think that was definitely the the main aim. But I'm so glad you got out of that and you reached a doctor. And what happened once you got to the doctor? What did the doctor say?
So for me, it was, you're right. I mean, it was dangerous, and looking back, it was probably stupid. But I knew that like stopping on the side of the road was not going to solve what was wrong with me. I could tell that I needed help professionally. I was afraid I was having a heart attack, to be honest, or it felt like one, and it really messed with me. So I was like, I need to get to a doctor. So that's why I did what I did, and I finally get to urgent care. I'm there. I go in. My blood pressure is like through the roof. They're freaking out. They don't know what's wrong with me. And eventually, the doctor finally comes in, because over here, a nurse comes in and takes your vitals and asks you a bunch of questions. And then the doctor comes in, and then the doctor comes in and says, "You know what? You're just having a panic attack. Everything else seems fine, but let's do some blood work and blah blah blah." I'm like, "Okay, that's fine. That makes sense. Let's do that." And she says, "Your blood pressure is so high. I'm going to give you some blood pressure medication, but I'm also going to give you some Xanax, which will help with panic attacks, because that's pretty much what you've just had, is a panic attack." And she's like, "Is there a reason why you're potentially having a panic attack, or could it be that there is something that's causing this, or what's going on?" And I explained to her, I've had a pretty difficult year. Pandemic is not even part of it, but I've had a pretty difficult year. So yes, and she's like, "Yeah, that's definitely a panic attack, and let's see what the blood work says, and we'll go from there." So okay, I go in, pick up my prescriptions. I do speak to my therapist. I'm already doing therapy at this point, but I speak to my therapist and ask her about Xanax. I'm like, "I've never taken anything like this before." She's like, "Try one at home in the night when you want to and see how that goes." So I do, and it has a pretty interesting effect. I can see why people get addicted to it, though it's not addictive for me, but it does serve a purpose for sure. And I don't take the blood pressure medication because my actual GP says it's you need 6 months of consistent pressure at that height to become a blood pressure patient, because it's, once you get on those medications, you can't get off them easily. So he's like, "You're young. There's no real reason for it. Just let's see if it is psychological or is it actually physical." So we wait and see, and eventually my pressure comes down. But that it takes a little bit of time.
You know, I had now when I look back at it, I've had my experience with panic, which was different from yours. But but I can understand that feeling where you actually think like something's wrong and I need to get to the doctor or the ER ASAP, right? And so this was February 2020, and I'm taking a bath. And I'm basically in the shower, and it's a hot shower. And then somewhere, like while I was having a bath, I feel like I can't feel my throat. Like I can't feel it. I feel like is it choking? Is it swelling up internally? And the previous night there was a cockroach in the bathroom, so I'd sprayed some of that the cockroach spray, which is poisonous, and I could taste that in my mouth. So I was like, "Hey man, has like the residue of that spray mixed with the steam of the hot water, and have like I consumed it?" And so immediately it was the panic reaction. So turn off the shower, turn off the geyser, quickly wiped myself, immediately called one of my closest friends. He wasn't in town, so I called up another friend who was at dinner with another common friend, and so they said, okay, man, we're driving and we're going to pick you up, and they're going to get there in like 5 minutes. So I quickly wear my clothes, and I said, okay, the best thing to do is to go into the outdoors and go onto the street. So if something happens to me, I'm on the street outside my apartment building gate, and they'll pick me up, right? And that's what I did. And these guys like turn up in no time. They pick me up. They take me to the first hospital. Their ER room was full. So then we decide to go to the next hospital, and we go there, and I'm waiting, and I tell the ER doctor, I feel like something's up in my throat. She checks it, and she's like, yeah, it is a bit red, but she was cool. She was super cool. She wasn't too stressed. She said, don't worry, you're at the ER, you're going to be fine. We're here to help you. Um, and then it took a little bit of time, but they managed to then like sort of place me on the bed. They checked me again. They checked all my vitals. Everything seemed to be okay. She said, you know what? If you would like, I'll give you an antihistamine shot. And I said, yeah, definitely do that, And she said, it's going to make you feel a little woozy, and just sort of like, just know that you're going to feel a bit woozy. So I said, okay. So she did sort of give me that shot, and the same friend that two friends actually picked me up, and one of them said, hey man, you're not sleeping home at your own apartment tonight. You come over to my place. My brother's there, my parents are there. It's better than you living alone. So we went to his apartment, and I spent the next couple of weeks there, thinking that I was unwell. It was only later on that I realized that this was panic, and yeah, it's at that point of time you think there's something like horrifically wrong with yourself. Um, but what kind of like what kind of impact did it have on you after this particular incident? I'm sure you just don't get back to like normal, and say, hey, it's okay, it's just like one-off incident, and we're good, we're going to continue as usual, business as usual. So what was like the impact of it from then on? Because this incident is I would say is a little scarring, right?
Absolutely, man. It's very scarring because it's driving, right? It's something I have to do on a day-to-day basis. It's not something that I'm able to avoid. I have to go to work. I don't have an option. But in the immediate aftermath, I literally took the week off work that week. It was a very stressful time at work anyway. But I took the week off and I just literally lay in bed and I watched TV and I played video games and I did nothing for the first time in probably 3 years. I did a staycation, a forced staycation, because it was pretty much my body telling me that I needed to stop. There are times when your body just says, okay, stop it. You're pushing too much. You've pushed too much already. You need to stop. And that's all that it was. But you're right. It was panic. And the immediate aftermath, that helped me control my blood pressure and prove that actually it wasn't a physical problem. And the physiological symptoms were actually only being caused by mental health issues. And what became very interesting was I realized that I had a connection to coffee that I was brewing at home that actually would trigger, because it would push my heart rate up, and that heart rate being pushed up would lead to a feeling of adrenaline, which would lead to a reminder of the fact that, oh crap, I feel like I'm going to have another panic attack. But that would cause anxiety about the panic attack, which would make it like a weird cycle. I would be more afraid of the panic, and then that would cause more panic. So I'd be stressed about the panic, and that would cause more panic. And before I knew it, I was in another panic attack without any reason whatsoever. And this continued for a couple of weeks. So initially it was fine, but then eventually started happening a lot more. And I started to, and what's really strange is this connects quite a bit to the pandemic, because I was at this time I was trying to make friends and I was trying to be more social, and I had a good support system, So I would still meet close friends who were all colleagues who I worked with on a daily basis, but I would still get panic attacks when I was with them. And I would freak out about the most random things. Like, for example, taking a Xanax and then drinking within 4 hours is supposedly dangerous. Now, it is dangerous, and I wouldn't recommend anybody do it, but it's not like it kills every single person if you have one beer. But I would freak out. And I would think, like, oh crap, I can't breathe properly and I don't know what's going on, so I need to stop. And then the next day I would feel like I have COVID, because the panic would create this sensation of my throat swelling up, or I have a stuffy nose. And then that anxiety, that COVID anxiety, would create more panic. And it just became this vicious cycle that would just kept going on and on and on. And it all stems, to be honest, from clear issues that I've been having over that course of that year. But it was because I'm not a person who has anxiety regularly, but I am somebody who definitely always used my kind of mental focus and heightened awareness to sometimes drown out the bad and focus on what needs to get done, and just do that. And for the first time in my life, I was not able to do that anymore.
Mm. Mm. Got it. So I remember the conversations that we had back then, and I remember this sort of vicious cycle that you were in. I very clearly remember it. Talking about it almost like 18 months ago, approximately. Um, yeah, it was a hectic time at work, but there was also so much going on in your life at that point. I remember the both of us getting on our calls so often, and there was more to it than work, right? But there was stuff going on in your personal life.
At the end of the day, this is definitely caused by. It was definitely caused by my issue with my marriage, kind of falling apart, and that was evident, but it didn't seem evident at the time, right? At the time, it felt like I was just pushing myself too much and I felt sick. But over a period of time, and now looking back, clearly that's what the issue was. I had a marriage that was failing. I was trying to figure out who I was. I had a daughter who was a year and a half. I had parents who were struggling financially in the pandemic. I had a wife who left me, but was also needing me because she had mental health issues. And there was like just this intense pressure from me to hold everything together, because my dad has mental health issues. My mom, I love her to death, but she's been a housewife for the longest time. She's a great support system, but she can't physically contribute to, or rather financially contribute to the situation. My sister's in India, and she, makes Indian income, so she can't really help much either. She's trying to build her career, and I am like the glue that's holding everybody together, right? My parents have no money, so they're living with me. They're helping with my daughter. My daughter is struggling, but not struggling. She's fine actually, and luckily she's the one who was least affected. But I need to be there for her because my wife is struggling with bipolarity and struggling with all sorts of other issues. She's going to the hospital. I'm taking her to the hospital, and at the same time, I'm in probably the most hectic job I've been in a long time, and I'm getting bombarded every single day with people who are unhappy. It's the pandemic. Everybody is on edge. Everybody is struggling for money. Everybody's pissed off. I work in property management. People aren't able to make rents. Like, my job is to deal in customer service to some extent. I'm a customer service manager, and it's just, it's brutal every single day. And everything, I'm shocked I didn't like have more of an issue than just the panic disorder. Like, I'm surprised I didn't get fired from my job. I'm surprised I didn't break down and just like stop functioning. Like, I'm surprised that I was able to make it through that. Looking back, I have no idea how I made it through it. It was just focus and therapy and support and friends that were able to get me there. But the personal trauma from my wife leaving me was probably the most jarring and probably the most effective thing that really led to this point.
Yeah, that's huge, and there was so much going on, right? There's, like you said, there's so much of pressure. You have a young daughter. You're also like the caretaker to your wife at that point of time. Your wife who's now the two of you are separated, and yeah, your parents are dependent on you at the same time, and they're at this point, I believe they were not living with you, but they were nearby, but they had their own financial issues. I can totally understand the pressure, and it in many ways I feel like, yeah, I mean, if you're not feeling the pressure, then I don't think you're human, at that point of time. But strangely, I experienced panic, but I did not have these kind of triggers like you did, because I was actually in a pretty decent place. So end of 2019, I was living in Bandra, mentioned it before, my dream suburb, and I had a nice apartment. I was pretty settled in my job. I had a great team. I had a great manager. Um, Probably the least stressful time with regards to work um, at that particular point of time. And then, suddenly I noticed that my gut is sort of not operating like its usual self. And then it reminded me of, like, in 2014, I got diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome, and I was like, hey, and I recovered from that. Um, that's the whole story by itself. But I was like, hey, this strangely feels very much like that. But this time I'm very cool, I'm very calm. I narrowed down on one doctor that I want to meet versus the previous time where I saw some six different doctors. And and the doctor was out of town. He was in the States, and I was in Mumbai. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to wait. So I actually looked after myself for a month, and and then and it was early Jan. The doctor returned, managed to get an appointment, started treatment, actually got completely okay in about 45 days. And I think it was just one day prior to the shower panic incident where the doctor said, hey, you're completely okay. And I was like, oh, fantastic. I'm absolutely fine. I've recovered from IBS. Everything seems to be okay. The pandemic has not really hit India. I'm not too bothered about COVID at that point of time. Yeah, China is going berserk, and some parts of the West, but like India was okay. It was sort of like managing things at the airport, long queues and all of that. I said, this is fine. Um, and then boom, next day is the shower incident, and all I could think. I mean, at that point of time, I did not know what really led to that incident. And so cut to post the shower incident. I'm at my friend's place, and he's out and about. So I thought it would be a good idea to watch some stand up. He has this big screen in the living room, so I sat down to watch some stand up, and I'm watching stand up, and I'm not finding it funny. I'm not finding it funny at all. I was watching Dave Chappelle, and I like, at this point of time, I think he's brilliant. But at that point of time, I was just like, man, this is just not working for me. And I'm suddenly feeling a little breathless, and this was like the day after the incident, and I was like, okay, I think something's up. I think the doctor has not diagnosed something. But at the same time, my friend's parents are around, so I feel like, man, I don't want to bother them. I'm not sure what's going on. So I said, okay, you know what? Let me just go to the bedroom. Let me lie down. It doesn't really help. Then I start listening to music just to distract myself, and it actually works. I listen to music, and it works. And then I stop listening to music, and then boom, start feeling anxious again, and breathless. And this goes on for a bit, and I'm trying to be really normal in front of my friends' parents, and uh, just pretending that everything's okay. And at that point, I realized, okay, I need to call somebody. So I called up a friend, a friend's sister actually, who's a therapist, and I said, hey, I'm feeling this, but I went to the ER and we checked everything, and everything seems to be okay. She said it sounds like you're having a panic attack, and till that point, I did not have a term for what I was experiencing. So
Right.
yeah, so she was like, I think you're having a panic attack, and I think you should get some help. So I said, okay, great. I was like, can you help me? And she said, no, I can't help you because we know each other, but I can recommend some therapists, and I think you should start off on that journey. So I said, okay. She gives me a bunch of numbers, and but I'm still not convinced, right? I'm still not convinced. So my friend comes back to his apartment a little later on, and I'm like, hey man, I'm feeling all of this, and I trust him, and I can really like open up to him. And so I said, I'm feeling all of this, and I feel a little foolish at the same time after last night and all of that. He said, hey man, if you're feeling it, you're feeling it. And he was just amazing at that point. He said, I said, I want to go to the GP, and he said, yeah, let's do it this evening. Set up an appointment. I'll drive you there. I'll come with you. And I was like, great man, thank you so much. And he drove me there, and while while we went there, we went to the GP, and the GP checked everything, and she said, Banas, you're absolutely okay. Uh, you're absolutely fine. I think it's in your head. I still wasn't convinced, and this was a GP who I've known for a while, and I still wasn't convinced. And I remember driving away, and we were driving past Carter Road, and Carter Road is sea facing. So my friend thought that it'd probably be a bit therapeutic. And I remember looking at him and almost like about to cry, telling him, man, hey man, I don't know how to feel better. You know, I don't know what this is. I don't know how to feel better. And he just slowed the car down, and he said, I don't remember exactly what he said, but I just knew he was there for me, and I felt like I could be vulnerable at that particular point of time. You know, and I think it was. And yeah, I think a week later I narrowed down on a therapist, and I started therapy. And it was only during therapy I realized the term that you could give to this whole experience is health anxiety. So, my situation was so different from yours. Uh, it was my life was fairly calm. I had actually recovered from the big trigger, which was IBS, but IBS brings anxiety along with it, you know. And this time around, I was actually aware of it, but I did not know the relation between anxiety and panic. This was new to me. So, yeah, man. So very different situations, but yeah, I think I was very fortunate to have that friend who eventually pointed me in the right direction. But I can only imagine, man. I think you had a lot more pressure. You had a lot going on at that point of time.
I think it's everybody, has their own individual pressures and stories and difficulties with dealing with it. I mean, I know that you were dealing with health anxiety at a much higher level than I was dealing with regular anxiety, right? Like, I had no anxiety at all, but it was hidden in this idea of self, this idea of this perfect life that I had lost, and the marriage that had ended, and the fact that I had a child who was going to be from a broken home, and all these feelings that you never imagine are going to happen to you are now happening to you. And it's weird because I had the freaking perfect life. I mean, I left my home country, went to school abroad. I managed to find a beautiful, intelligent, strong woman who was my partner and everything. And we get married and we have a kid. And we buy a house before we're 30 in America, in Los Angeles. Like, everything's perfect. There's nothing. At the end of it all, you're like, oh wow, I made it, man. Like, I grew up in a 400 square foot one bedroom living on the freaking couch with my sister in the same living room. I took the bus and my father didn't know how to drive a car. And I'm like, here I am living the American dream, and I worked to get here, and my partner worked with me to get here, even though she came from a better upbringing, or rather a more privileged situation than I did, but still, like, we were just great partners. And then suddenly, before I even know it, it's gone, it's ended, like, for no reason whatsoever. It's a shock. And I don't think anything can prepare you for such a situation. It's like losing a loved one in a car accident someday, I think, is probably the only way I could compare it. I haven't experienced that, but I can only imagine it's somewhat like that. And it shook me to my core. It made me reconfigure who I was. And I think the
Yeah.
panic disorder was me just being completely afraid of what was happening to me, and whether I would be able to survive it, whether I'd be able to be a good enough father by myself, whether I could be a father at all by myself, whether I could financially survive in a country that I'm not as familiar with as my own. You have all these questions. You have self-doubt, right? When somebody leaves you, you have all these questions about just yourself, and are you worth it? Are you good enough? And I've had incidents where I'll have a panic attack and then I'll break down crying at a freaking department store because I'll see a guy and I'll be like, you know what? That's the kind of guy my wife would want to sleep with, and like stupid stuff like that would just trigger a random panic attack. And it was, or I would. It's actually really interesting. So this is now a year and a half, a year actually away from the panic attack. Um, I drank coffee that was homemade, which is very similar to what triggered a panic attack, for the first time in a year, just a couple of days ago.
Okay.
And I was driving to work, and I had a panic attack. Even though I'm on medication for it, I still had a mild panic attack. Now, um, of course, I have kind of proofed myself a little bit, protected myself with my vehicle.
Yeah.
At this point in panic attacks,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
made a few
Yeah.
decisions
Yeah.
that would help protect against it. I actually changed my life's future path so that I can not ever experience that situation again.
Yeah, you got to
And
thank Elon Musk for that, because
y-
you drive a Tesla which is self-driven, so you're not going to meet with an accident even if you have a panic attack when you're in the car now, which is brilliant.
I thank Elon Musk for helping me with my mental health journey and allowing me to get to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an expensive vehicle, but I'll tell you what, it's cost effective when it keeps you
Alive.
having an income
Yeah.
and alive. Well, you
Keeps
know
you
what?
alive.
Alive is the first one, and then
Yeah.
keeping it. Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I don't. It's not like I pass out or anything in my car, but it does help.
Mm.
I swear, it does help. When I have a bad one, I put on the
Mm.
autopilot, and it doesn't crash into anything, and it turns itself. So, okay, first of all, disclaimer: you're always responsible for the vehicle, but
Right.
at least I have a layer of added protection. That's all I see it as, and it does make
Yeah,
a
you have
difference.
support.
Yes, I have
You
support.
have support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's artificial intelligence, but it's support nonetheless. And yeah, I mean, Tesla is not yet available in India, and self-driven cars not yet available in India. But I think the day I sit in one, I think I'm just gonna be like, wow. I think I'm gonna be freaked out. I'm gonna be like, okay, there's some spirit driving this vehicle. When I see the steering wheel move on its own, I'm glad you have the Tesla now, and it's interesting that the coffee sort of has this kind of effect on people, and maybe this is for a separate podcast, but my interest in like food and mental health and gut and mental health, and quite a few experts talk about like not having coffee first thing in the morning, especially on an empty stomach, and so on. But that's a different topic altogether. Um, but yeah, now now that it's been a year, it's been a year plus actually, and you got support from your therapist. You got the medication that you require. So what's different from how you deal with it now versus before?
I think that one of the main things is that, and I guess because I had an incident just literally a couple of days ago, it's a great kind of point of view moment for me. Um,
Hmm.
First of all, the best way to fix that issue is get a Tesla. So, but apart from getting a Tesla, if you can't get a Tesla, go to therapy, get medication, and that stuff will help you. But um, there
Yeah.
was some great advice, man, from my therapist. There was advice
Mm.
initially. There was a lot. I tried to work a lot of it out on my own, with friends, support, and I have to say that I had a wonderfully supportive friend circle during the hardest part of my life, and I know not a lot of people have had that, but I didn't have friends who didn't quite understand what I was experiencing, and they were able to give me very solid advice on how to stay centered, but also deal with the panic. And I think a lot of what I did was focus on, initially at least I focused on just what was causing it and dealing with it, and then I realized that there's a root there that's even more deeper than I ever anticipated. So by solving that root and dealing with this ability to control your own life or lack of control over your life, right? That's the big question here. That was for me at least. By accepting that I have no control over life, I only have control over what I do. I'm not a religious person, so for me, it's very much about I can only control what I do. I have no control over so many different things, but I do control what I eat. I do control every breath that I take. I do control every word that I say. I do control
Every thought that you have.
exactly.
I mean, how you react to that thought actually, more than not every thought, but every how you react to each thought. Yeah.
Exactly, and how you execute on your thoughts and on your feelings, right? So all of that is in your control completely, and you're accountable and responsible for those. So that's kind of what has changed to some extent for me. But also, I have to add that for me, a big part of it is the medication. Sure, that's a support, that's a crutch, but it's also realizing that there is a sense of focus and understanding on what's happening when it's happening now. I understand that it's not real. I understand that it's in my head. I know that the physiological symptoms seem real, but they are not real. And it's very hard to accept that what your body is telling you is not real. Because when my pressure goes up, it's physically actually going up, but it's not always up.
Oh, okay, okay.
It's not
Mm.
always up, right? So it's this idea of it goes up in that moment, but you feel like, oh, I'm gonna have a heart attack, or I'm gonna have a stroke, or I'm gonna have something. And I mean, I know stroke is low blood pressure, but still, like, you feel like something's wrong, and you have to remind yourself that this is not real. This is in your head. Your head is causing your body to react in a certain way. And what I would do is I would try to sound out on a different sense. So if what was causing my imbalance was my inner ear, and I was feeling vertigo symptoms or breathing symptoms, I would try to speak out loud to hear my own voice and help with it. But what had happened is my ear was blocked. My ear was blocked, so I wouldn't hear myself properly, and that would actually trigger more panic. So I'm like, you know what? There are different senses. So I'll now focus on touch, for example, and I'll literally focus all my energy on the feel of the leather on the steering wheel, or the feel of the metal on the logo, or the feel of the touch screen, or the feel of the knob that controls the volume, and the plastic and what that feels like. And I'll literally focus every energy on every ridge, every ounce, everything that's there. I'll focus on smells. I'll put the window down and just focus on every single smell and I really identify them. And what it does is it takes my mind away from the anxiety of the one sense that feels incapacitated, which is my sense of sight, which is really being triggered here, right? Because my inner ear is making me imbalanced and it's my sight that's messing with me and my ability to speak is making it worse. So I go back to the senses that aren't impacted by this particular panic issue. And it actually made a big difference for me because I was able to focus away from what I basically broke the cycle of creating more panic by creating more anxiety by focusing on something completely else within my own self that I had control of. And that is a huge difference from what I did initially, at least, that I can do now. And it's a great idea if you have a panic attack and you're not able to figure out what you're going to do or what's happening. Try to focus on a sense that, and it's hard. I mean, it takes practice. It takes time. I didn't learn this overnight. It's been a year.
Right.
And I still had a panic attack and it still freaked me out. But with practice and time, you can deal with it at least. You can't overcome it and get rid of it, but you can deal with it.
So the way I look at it, it's essentially just becoming aware, that hey, okay, I'm experiencing a panic attack, right? Versus just being like, oh, why is this happening to me? Just having that, just sort of like observing, okay, I'm having a panic attack, right? And then obviously, like you said, you focus on other senses, which is almost like it's sort of like grounding you, centering you, making you feel more present. So, but how's the you spoke about vertigo? How's that related to panic? Is vertigo something that you've had before, or are they related? Are they independent?
Everybody experiences their panic attacks, I think, in a different manner or way. So for me, vertigo is a big one. I had a viral infection in my inner ear when I was younger that caused vertigo for a few days, and it's probably.
Okay.
I mean, I've had a bunch of different illnesses. None of them that were like debilitating for life or whatever, but I've had like, different stuff, chickenpox and that kind of stuff, and the vertigo really messed me up because it really made me feel completely useless, right? Because vertigo means you can't walk, you can barely talk, you can't watch TV, you can't read a book, you can't look at your phone, you literally cannot do anything. But it really messes with your head because you take your sight for granted and you take your ability to see the world for granted. So when you are no longer able to see correctly, or not correctly, but every time you see, that is what makes you sick. It's weird. It's like taking your favorite food or taking water that's actually making you sick every time you drink it. You need water to survive. And that's what's so strange about the whole situation. So vertigo is something I've experienced in the past. Everybody experiences panic in different ways. Now, I know for a fact that I've spoken to different people who've had panic disorders, and for example, there are people who, after they've had a panic disorder, will go to work out, and the heart rate increase when you work out will trigger a panic disorder because it kind of feels similar. Or driving is a very common issue for panic disorders because it's one of the worst places that you should lose control. So there's a very like a niggling fear in the back of your head that you're going to lose control. Like people fear that anyway. So that's a common one, to be honest. But there are many different situations where that happens, and you will experience panic in your way probably. But if you look at my situation, it's the pandemic, so breathing. I have tonsillitis, so breathing. And I've had vertigo in the past, and I rely on I've always had 20/20 vision, right? So you put
Right,
those
that's
three
the
things
second
together,
trigger.
exactly, right? You put those three things together, And the vertigo is not caused by a problem in my inner ear. It's caused by my blood pressure shooting up
Mm.
to the
Mm.
point where it's actually putting so much pressure on my
Mm.
inner ear that it causes a physiological
Mm.
sensation of vertigo. Because I
Mm.
got a hearing test. I went to an
Got it.
ENT and did every test possible on my ears. And I was like, there's pressure
Mm.
building up, and every time I go up a hill, you know how you pop your ears or when you fly on a plane. I'm like,
Mm.
that that's giving me vertigo.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah.
there are experimental surgeries we could do and give you a hole there to release the pressure and stuff. But he's like, I wouldn't recommend it, man. He's like, you're fine. So after doing all of that checkup, I realized that it's really in my head, and I
Okay.
have control over it to some extent. And and eventually I went to medication that helped me completely kind of conquer it.
Right. So there's basically, I mean, what you pointed out is basically there could be like different triggers for panic. Like on a particular day, it could be something which is like vertigo, and then on another day it is like it's COVID and you have tonsillitis, so you're thinking, oh damn, I've got COVID now. The pandemic is on, and then the other day, yeah, and it could be something else on another day, right? So there are like in your case, I think there are these like very sort of specific triggers. I think, and then obviously you went to the root cause through therapy. And just for the audience to know, a therapist who's not a psychiatrist also cannot prescribe medications. So it's a psychiatrist that prescribes medications. So just FYI. Um, but yeah, in my case, I actually haven't really experienced panic after that shower incident. Actually, there was one more incident after that where I felt like I was going to faint, and then I go back to the ER, and then that particular doctor, this time it was a different doctor. It was a doctor who was not as nice as the other one, the few weeks before that, and he was like really serious and like unhappy. He looked unhappy. I don't know, maybe he wasn't, but he checked everything, and the nurse checked everything, and they were like, "You're absolutely fine. Uh, do you want us to put you on IV, like a like a saline? I think, I guess, like, I mean, just." I think they felt like they needed to do something. I was like, yeah, okay, do it, and
Sure, why not?
and
Yeah, I need some salt.
yeah, and literally, so another friend actually who was staying at my apartment, he was a guest of my flatmate, but we knew each other as well, and he he came up to me while I was lying down on that emergency room bed, and he said, "Hey man, um, are you stressed out about something?" I said, "No, nothing like in particular, But yeah, I guess I kind of like tend to worry about things and all." It's like, okay. I was like, "Why do you ask?" He said, "Because the doctor said everything's okay with you. I think your friend's just stressed out." And so I was like, "Yeah." So I felt really embarrassed because all that ER treatment, whatever happens, it's not even treatment, and then I get up and I walk out, and the and and there were a whole bunch of like male nurses and just like all the nurses, like the staff, the receptionist, they just looked at me like, oh shit, this guy who entered looking completely off has just walked out as if nothing's wrong. And I'm embarrassed. I am really embarrassed at this point. I'm like, I let's just pay the fees and let's just leave. And but but therapy, I do begin therapy. This incident happened when I was 2 sessions down, so I go back to therapy and I tell about this, and then we start working towards the root cause. And my root cause for these sort of panic situations is anxiety, and health anxiety in particular. And further down the road, maybe in the episodes down the road, we'll get into like the root cause. But like my health anxiety stems from my childhood, and and this yeah, this whole sort of feeling that I can't get sick, because I can't, because in the situation that I was in, I can't afford to get sick. So I think what that has led to is that every time, not so much now after all the therapy and all the support I've got, but every time I had like a little small incident, like a small trigger, like for you it was tonsillitis. Oh my god, I've got COVID, right? Uh, and for me, it would be like, I sometimes did not have the answer, but then I'd go diving deep into it. So the GP said, hey, you know what, you don't need to like do any tests and all. I said, okay. I went and did the test anyway. and I did a whole complete like whole bunch of blood tests, and everything came okay. And then I very sheepishly went back to the GP and I said, you know what, everything's okay. uh, I'm just going to continue with therapy. The good thing is that she didn't judge me. I thought she was going to be like, see, I told you. But she was just really kind. But yeah, so I think I think to just sort of round this conversation off, I think getting help and having the right kind of friends. And I not all friends understand. I think both of us have gone through that. Not all friends, not all family
Yep.
members get it. And we'll talk about that in the next episode. But I think, and there's no issue with that. I'm absolutely fine. I understand that they don't understand, but. But I think the ones that are able to empathize and listen and give you that space to be, and who believe you, who don't look at you as like some fool who is just overthinking this. I think they're super helpful. They're precious, and we'll talk about that in the next episode for sure. Just to sort of like give you a little bit about what the next episode is. The next episode is going to be about friends and family, and how these particular support systems can make your mental health better and sometimes worse. We're also creating a collaborative Spotify playlist, and we'll put the link in the description on our Instagram page, which is at mentalk_pod, at mentalk_pod. And if you feel a piece of music or a song fits this episode and what we spoke about, then just get onto the link and add it. And if you feel like telling us why that particular song or that bit of music, then you can write to us at askmentalk@gmail.com. And if you choose to like sort of keep this keep it private, then we'll keep it private. But if you're okay with it, then we'll probably share your story in the next episode or in one of the coming episodes. So thank you for listening. And if any of you wants to write to us, with some feedback or just anything, we're all ears. We're askmentalk@gmail.com. So all right, till next time.